It's a beautiful morning, the tail end of fall. Winter is just beginning to show its face. The temperature right now is about 2 degrees Celsius, so it's still positive. But nights, it's going to negative. And I wake up in the morning with my bird baths frozen solid, and sometimes with little chickadees and others hopping around on the ice. And so I go out usually with hot water to unfreeze them. This is our masjid, the Islamic Center for Western Massachusetts, and that's my workplace. It's a good point to begin my thought share, not a lecture, thought share on mentoring, not on choosing a mentor. That will be my next video, inshallah. But this is on being a mentor. And I say it's a good point because when I told you about the little chickadees trying to get to the ice, the chickadee, for those who don't know, is the state bird of Massachusetts. It's called the black-capped chickadee, to give it its full name. And you see that sky, see that sky. It's tiny, it's actually smaller than a sparrow. And it stays here through the winter, does not migrate. And I'm saying it's a good point to begin because I talked about going out in the freezing weather to the bird baths to knock out the ice and put in hot water. And I think that's a good point to begin a talk on mentoring. I'm going to be brief, but I will also share with you some personal experiences which I hope will be useful. The first and foremost question about mentoring that you should ask yourself is the classic question of to be or not to be. Do I want to be a mentor or not? And I'm deliberately beginning from do I want. It is a emotion level question. It's a very fundamental question in the core of your being. Do you want to be a mentor or not? It's extremely important to get that clear in your mind before you go further, because mentoring is not for the faint-hearted. Mentoring is something that requires dedication and time and energy and patience and patience and patience, and it requires insight. It requires enormous amount of intelligence to be able to pinpoint, to diagnose what the mentor, what the mentee, and this is probably a good point to introduce here, what is the one who goes to a mentor called? I mean, I call them demented, but but I don't think that's a nice word to use, so say mentee, which is the usual word. The actual word is protege, but people seem to use mentee. So it is the ability to diagnose what the protege, the mentee, really needs, And when I say really, the emphasis is on the word really, because as distinct and sometimes different from what they may think they need, distinct and different from what they may ask you for. So the ability to know that. Let me begin there with my story of my most favorite mentor, one of my first mentors. Not the first mentor, but one of the first. And certainly my first mentor, professionally speaking, in the area of behavioral science, in the area of leadership development, Mr. Aroon Joshi. I want to dedicate this podcast to him, Mr. Aroon Joshi, my first professional mentor, my dearest friend and confidant for over 40 years now. I want to tell you two stories which illustrate for you and illustrate for me the qualities, some of the qualities that I described here, which is, and among them especially, insightful, being insightful, and something I didn't say just now, which is tactful. I was invited to do an organizational diagnosis for a company which had a new CEO. This was in Bangalore, and I went to that with another very dear friend of mine for many, many years now, and we have worked together. So she and I went to this organization, and both of us were new to the whole field of organizational consulting, organizational development consulting, and so on and so forth. And so we were green beyond what you can imagine. And so we applied both of us had management degrees and so forth. So we applied the classical approach, which is we will do for the organizational diagnosis. We will begin with a survey. Let me backtrack a little bit. The task given to us, the frame of reference that was given to us was the organization wanted a personnel policy manual. A personnel policy manual. So we took the classic approach and we said we want to begin with an organizational diagnosis. Now, this wasn't completely insane. I mean, you might say, well, if the organization asked you for something, why didn't you just go do it, right? Because you can't just write a personnel policy manual just like that. What's the basis of that? And for the basis, we said, well, and when we were given this assignment, there was a lot of big talk about this is what we want for the employees, and we are so genuinely interested, and we want complete equality and transparency, and all kinds of good stuff. You want to see it as buzzwords. Well, buzzwords. We are passing through. I'm passing through this cemetery here, and the only reason I stopped here and want to show you the cemetery is because this cemetery, as all cemeteries in the whole world, consists of people who could have been mentors. Some were, some were not. You might like to ask yourself, where would I like to be? Because we will leave this world one day, and we will leave this world having left behind a mark or not, and that choice is ours. So to come back to our story, we went to this assignment, and we did the organization diagnosis, we did the survey, and from the survey, I guess it wasn't very surprising for us, but what we came up with was that the biggest problem, the biggest block to whatever the organization or the people who called us said they wanted to have in the organization had a name. And that name was the name of that CEO. So the survey was very clear. And it was we did the survey anonymously. People were not asked to put their names, so they were very open and frank about what they thought of the CEO and his operational style and policies and whatnot. And here was a man who wanted to, he didn't say it in so many words, but what he actually wanted to do was to enshrine his style in a formal document, which would have teeth, so it would then be enforced. So again, like good, honest consultants with high integrity, at least that's what we like to think of ourselves as, we gave that report, we gave the feedback to the CEO and his vice president, and we said that this is the issue, and with due respect, if you really want anything good to come out of this whole thing, then you must change your leadership style. What happened was probably predictable, which is that he listened to all that with a big smile on his face, and he said, "Thank you very much for your effort, and we'll call you." So we said, "Well, what about the personnel manual?" He said, "We'll call you." He said, "What about the personnel manual?" He said, "We'll call you." Now, so it was very clear that this was the equivalent of a Dear John letter. We'll call you means we will not call you. We don't care who you are, what you are. And as far as we are concerned, this assignment ended before it started. So I was very upset. And I said, "Well, what did I do wrong?" So I called Mr. Aroon Joshi, and I told him my sob story. I said, "This is what happened," and so on and so on. And now he listened to the whole thing, and I can tell you, maybe probably after the first 3 minutes of what I had started saying, Mr. Joshi knew exactly what was coming, but he didn't stop me. He didn't say, "All right, I know what you are going to say. Don't waste my time. Here is what you should do." He didn't say any of that. He listened, and I think I can be very long-winded when I want to, so I was really letting off all my frustration. I was new into consulting. I needed this job very badly. It was literally food on the table as far as I was concerned, and I managed to blow it, and I blew it for myself, and I blew it for my friend. So I let out all my frustration and my sadness. So Mr. Joshi listened to all that in great patience and silence. And then he said to me, "Yavar," he said, "remember this." He said, always, always, always start where the client wants you to start. He said, unless you have an ethical or moral issue with that, start where the client wants you to start, not where you think you should start. So now I was doing what most demented will do when a mentor is talking to them and saying something which they really don't like to hear. Which is, I said to him, but Mr. Joshi, I really believe that this guy was a horrible manager. I really believe that he was the cause of all the problems. I really believe this, I really believe that. Mr. Joshi listened to all of that also. And then he said, yeah, but you're not listening to me. So listen to me. So I said, yes, sir. He said, always start where the client wants you to start. So I said, yes, sir. I said, but I know this better than the client. I can see the problem better than the client can. He said, of course. He said, of course, that's why you're there. As a consultant, it would be very unlikely that you would not see the problem as, that you would be deceived by the problem like the client was, for the simple reason that, first of all, you are not in the problem. It doesn't affect you personally, apart from, in this case you lost some potential fees, but otherwise it doesn't affect you. You have the benefit of perspective, and perspective is a function of distance. So you are able to see the overall picture, which the client doesn't see. The client is incapable of seeing. So you say, I know the problem. Of course you know the problem. But believe me, the problem belongs to the client. It is not your problem. The solution and the cure also belongs to the client. It's not for you to determine what that cure is and how to apply it. You can suggest that, you can design that, you can recommend that, but who gets to implement it? The client. So it's not a question of you being wrong. The question is that you are right, but how do you convince the client that you're right? And he said the thing to do is to begin where the client wants you to begin. So this is one of my big lessons in being mentored from my mentor, Mr. Aroon Joshi. The other big experience, literally life-changing experience of being mentored by him was, I was in the behavioral science program where he was the facilitator in 1983. And here it is 2024. So, and I was going through, I was less than a year into my employment. I was an assistant manager in a tea garden in South India, and I had a very lousy manager. The manager was, I don't want to list all the problem, but almost everything you can name, the manager had it, all the negative stuff. So with this kind of a manager, I had to deal with on a daily basis. It was not easy, it was very tough. And I was thoroughly frustrated. And I was at the point of giving up and saying, to hell with it, I'm leaving. So in my lab, the behavioral science lab, we were talking about, he said, okay, share with us your current challenges. I said, okay, there goes. This is mine. And again, for, I don't know, maybe an hour or something, I talked about all the problems that I had. My manager and all that was wrong with him and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of all that, Mr. Joshi said only 2 words. Just 2 words. And those 2 words have remained with me all my life. And they will remain with me all my life. And take them to my grave. Because I ask myself these 2 words every single time I'm faced with a problem. And the 2 words he used was, so what? So what? Imagine, put yourself in my place. I'm sitting there. I've been pouring my heart out for an hour, probably, hoping and expecting to get sympathy and hoping for Mr. Joshi or somebody to hug me and say, here is my shoulder, feel free to wet it to your heart's content, and you are the best thing that the sun ever shone on. And he didn't say any of that. He did not say any of that. He didn't even move from his chair, from where he was sitting on the floor. We were all sitting on the floor. He just said, so what? And that sounded on the face of it as the most heartless thing that you could possibly say. Now, I'm Indian, I'm Muslim, I am raised up in a tradition where you don't abuse your teachers. You don't curse them or something. But believe me, if I could, I would. I would call him all kinds of names and I would say, how can you say this to me? But I didn't. I did not. I was first of all struck dumb. I was speechless. I was trying to think to myself, that this man here, I thought he was my friend. Boy, was I mistaken. I tell him my whole heart's story, the entire thing, and all that the man can say is, so what? I mean, how disheartening is that? How heartbreaking is that? So what? Hello? It's my life, brother. So what? But again, I didn't say any of that. I just sat there, totally flabbergasted, speechless. And then Aroon said something else. He said, so what are you going to do about it? So what was not the sentence, it was just the beginning of the sentence. But the way he put it, he could have said the whole sentence in the beginning. He didn't. He just said, so what? And then he said, so what are you going to do about it? And believe me, that was the biggest lesson in my life. So what am I going to do about it? That's the question. The fundamental question to solve any problem is, so what are you going to do about it? And if the answer is, oh, you see, I'm not going to do anything about it, and I have my list of reasons, but I'm expecting somebody else to do something about this, to solve my problem, and to take away my pain, and to give me a leg up in my organization or whatever it is, then brother, goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Because then it means that, no, you don't really want a solution. You really love the problem. You want to be with the problem. And that was my huge learning. So what? Let me close this episode, which is now about 25 minutes, with this story, and then we come to the next episode. As I said, I'm dedicating this whole thing, the entire series of however many episodes it takes on mentoring, to my dear friend Mr. Aroon D. Joshi. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and let us hear your comments.